An executive order to improve the nation's cybersecurity defenses is awaiting President Donald Trump's signature. The signing was scheduled for Tuesday, but it was postponed. President Trump did spend Tuesday morning meeting with cybersecurity experts at the White House about the administration's cyber goals. Mike Hettinger is president of Hettinger Strategy Group, and Rich Beutel is principal at Cyrrus Analytics. Gentlemen, thanks for coming on the program. What do we know about the president's cybersecurity executive order, what might be in it, and what it might mean for federal cyber officials? Rich, start with you.
Well, we're aware of the pool reports that I believe have properly connected the need for IT modernization to the cybersecurity problem. And this is something that we've been talking about now for months, and it's really good to see the Trump administration acknowledging that our old legacy IT throughout government is basically unprotectable. And to the extent that we want to get serious about cybersecurity, we've got to move forward in transitioning to modern technology and cloud-based platforms.
Mike, when you look at the delay in the cybersecurity order being signed after this meeting with cyber officials, what's your takeaway from that?
Well, I think they want to get it right. I think, obviously we weren't privy to anything other than the pool reports, as I think most people were in this situation. But I think the sense that I get, given everything that's happened over the last 12 days, is they met with cybersecurity experts. They talked about the big, broad goals of what they wanted to try to accomplish, and that includes IT modernization, which is great. But then they looked at the actual wording of the order and they said, let's take a step back and make sure that everything we just talked about in this meeting is accomplished in the order. And so they took a step back, and everything I see this morning says, you know, they're gonna try to get something out and signed fairly quickly.
And one of the things that looks to be a little different is more accountability for leaders at each of the agencies.
Right.
What do we know, if anything, about what accountability means? Because that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
It's interesting. We actually gave a presentation to a client group last week, and one of the things we mentioned in that is one of the lessons from the 2016 campaign is that cybersecurity was going to be a CEO/agency head's responsibility. And I think that's what we're seeing play out in the executive order. So what does that mean at the end of the day? Obviously, you know, the secretary, the deputy secretary, down to the CIO are going to make cybersecurity, you know, an important part of what they do, and I think that's great.
Rich, you mentioned the MGT Act, a little bit of a break potentially in that this week. A Senate staffer tells Federal News Radio they think they have a solution for the Congressional Budget Office score. Refresh my memory about the problem with the CBO score at the end of the last Congress.
Well, recall that in the last Congress, we got the Modernizing Government Technology Act through the House, but as we went over in the waning days of the last Congress, CBO issued a score of $9 billion for the Modernizing Government Technology Act, and that caused things, given the short time frame we had, to come to a screeching halt.
Meaning that the bill would cost that much money.
It would cost that much money to implement. Yes. Now, what the Modernizing Government Technology Act does is to create budget flexibilities both at the agency level using these things called working capital funds. And in addition, it's bundled together with the idea that came out of the Obama administration to set up an IT modernization fund, a super fund, if you want to characterize it, at GSA that would be new money going forward. And so when CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, looked at that structure, that hub and spoke structure for these flexibilities, they said it's going to cost $9 billion to implement, and that caused everybody to take a pause.
And nobody that I could identify on Capitol Hill of either party thought that score made sense, Mike.
Right.
How do you get around that, though, to make the Senate sit up and take notice?
So I think, at least from what we're hearing, there's a technical correction that you can make, you know, 5 words kind of thing in the actual language of the bill that would reduce the first year score. So essentially that first $3 billion. And the way it was scored is basically year 1, $3 billion, year 2, $3 billion, year 3, $3 billion, and that rolls up to $9 billion. So if you're able to take that first $3 billion off the table, you can negotiate everything else, and I think to us that's a critical breakthrough. So we'll see where it actually goes. I mean, there's still questions of, you know, how does the Appropriations Committee view this whole thing? Obviously, the Trump administration would like an infrastructure modernization plan. We think IT should be part of that, and I've heard Congressman Hurd and others talk about that as well. So we'll figure it out as we move forward, but I think MGT tied to the cybersecurity executive order when it comes out, critical step forward.
So Tony Scott and other folks in the Obama administration advocated for MGT pretty actively toward the end of the Obama administration. What jobs would you like to see the Trump administration fill as quickly as possible in order to have the same kind of advocates for technology modernization that the Obama team did? It's obviously federal CIOs one of them. Are there others?
Well, clearly the head of OMB, and to that extent we've made good progress going forward, as well as getting a federal CIO in place as soon as possible. But keeping that momentum and providing the tools such as these budget flexibilities to the CIO community, I think is a critical part. If we're going to hold the secretaries accountable for cyber breaches, then I think it's our responsibility to give them the tools and resources necessary to do that.
Go a little bit higher than that. I mean, deputy secretaries, right? Get those folks in place because they're going to have operational responsibility. The deputy director for management at OMB. These are critical jobs that all play a role in what we're talking about, whether it's modernizing systems or cybersecurity. And so the quicker we can get those folks in place, I think the better off we'll be overall.
Mike Hettinger, Rich Beutel, thanks as always, gentlemen.
Thanks, Frank.